Welcome to the Piedmont Unitarian Universalist Church. Piedmont UU sits on the traditional lands of the Catawba, Kiowa, and Sugaree peoples. We honor them. My name is Robin Mara, and I'll be worship assistant today for Reverend Dr. Amy Rio. We are a flourishing, vibrant, and radically welcoming congregation, which promotes diversity, inclusion, and social justice. We provide a safe haven for creative intellectual growth, spiritual development, and a deep sense of community for all who join us. We hope our liberal religious values will challenge you to join us as a community that lives boldly and acts justly. To all our visitors and members, we're very glad you're here in person or with us online, and we hope to see you again. Your presence is a gift to us. So we have several announcements for this Sunday. We'll have a covered dish lunch after church today. So please stay for the fellowship meal. And if you didn't bring anything to eat, don't worry about that. Or if you're just visiting today, please just stay and join us. There's plenty for everyone. Our CUPS group will host a Samhain observance this Saturday evening here at the church at 7 p.m. You're invited to bring items or photos of loved ones who have passed, including beloved pets. And if you feel called to do so, you can bring fall decorations for the altar, a snack to share after our rite, and drums and rattles. Everyone's invited to join us. And now I'd like to invite Harry and Ann up to speak with us about some exciting changes coming along.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. I have some exciting news to tell you about this morning. Tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, our landscaped architect, Laurel Holtzapfel, who we've worked with for some years planning the Memorial Garden, is going to be arriving with her landscape contractor to install what we have called the Sanctuary Garden. And this was a project that was approved by the congregation at the last congregational meeting. And it will be in front of the patio, and it will spread down that slope, and it will include some beautiful small trees and shrubs, viburnum, azalea, camellia, rhododendron, Christmas fern, and a few other things. It will also replace the tree, the redbud tree that was placed some years ago to honor Susan Burns and Mary Coppola for establishing the preschool. So that will be a special thing for them as well, to replace that tree that died recently to honor Susan and her work with that. And of course, I'm sure you've noticed this morning that the other big project has almost come to fruition with the completion of the entry improvements. So it's been a remarkable year, really, for all of the planning and the work that went into all the projects that have improved the appearance, both of the inside and the outside of our campus. It's really remarkable. I think if you look around, there's still a few more things we need to do with the entry improvements, and I think next Sunday you'll be even more delighted than you are this Sunday. And Harry has some more information for you as well.
So I'm Harry Lancaster. I'm going to want to let you know just a little bit about what plans that the city of Charlotte has for along the front of Mallard Creek Road out here. They're in the process of trying to put in multi-use paths or shared use paths in various places in the city. You're aware that we've got a development on the south side of us, Del Rey. We've got a development on the north side of us that hasn't started work yet, but they will. The city, as I said, is trying to establish what they call this shared use path in front of our property. And if you want to, you can Google Mallard Creek Road shared use path for more information on it. But this essentially is for the purpose of improving pedestrian safety, mobility, and connectivity along Mallard Creek Road. And can't really argue with that too much. There's a greenway on the other side of Mallard Creek Road. There's also a sidewalk on parts of the other side of Mallard Creek Road. But going back to these two developments, developments that are on this side of Mallard Creek Road, they have provided land, set aside land for this shared use path that goes along the edge of Mallard Creek Road. The reason this is important is because it's not just a little 4-foot sidewalk. A shared use path typically includes an 8-foot wide planting strip and then a 10 or a 12-foot wide sidewalk. So if you imagine that kind of acquisition or that use of that space, you've started to come way up into our property, as well as our property is elevated above the road, so you've got the slope of the road that factors in, or the slope of the cut that factors into it as well. So if the design was implemented as currently planned, we'd lose probably 30 feet or so of the land that's adjacent to Mallard Creek Road. It would take various trees and other plantings that would also impact our signs and driveways. So sometime this fall, perhaps in the next few weeks, the City of Charlotte project team is going to engage the public to share information about this project, as well as get nearby resident feedback. I've been told that the public engagement will be online as opposed to a face-to-face meeting. So it'll be important for us to go out, when we get notice about this, that it's available, it'll be important to go out and watch the presentation, view whatever information they have, and then provide feedback, because I've been told that the city will consider all submitted public feedback, and they also will notify the church as a nearby resident or a nearby property owner in advance of the meeting. So, just in terms of an action plan, when we get notice of this, view the presentation as soon as it's available, email the city your comments within whatever allotted time they provide. Personally, I think, and we'll provide sort of a, call it a go-by letter to use once we get the information, that your comments could say that a 10-foot wide sidewalk, an 8-foot wide planting strip is too much for this particular spot. Charlotte likes its tree canopy. This is going to tear out several trees. So we want to tell them to come back with a combined sidewalk and planting strip that's no wider than, say, 8 feet, something like that. So we recognize the importance of continuing the sidewalk through there, but just don't want it to take so much of our land. So as soon as we get information from the city about the timing of the meeting, we'll publicize it, and we ask that you review the information online when it's available and submit comments in a timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann and Harry. We appreciate the updates. And due to the landscaping work, if you come to church this week, please do not park at the Meeting House parking lot back here, because that lot will be reserved for vehicles needed for the planting. Reverend Amy will be out of the office for a few days, beginning on Thursday. And the weekly announcements will have contact information for any needs you might have during that time. And for other important information about our beloved community, please see your order of service, or if you're on our email list, please check our monthly newsletter and weekly announcements. Whatever brought you to this place at this hour, we welcome you. May you find something you need, and may you leave richer in spirit than when you arrived.
The flame of our chalice brings light to what might confuse or divide us. It shines understanding into the darkest places. May this flame illumine the places where we need wisdom, compassion, and hope. I invite you to please join me now in singing the words to lighting our chalice, the symbol of our faith. They are found in your bulletin. I invite you now to please rise in body or spirit for our call to worship, which is found in your bulletin. Let's now all join together. Bring who you are as you enter our church this morning. Bring your best self and your struggling self. Bring your mistakes and your triumphs. Bring your shortcomings and your recommitment to good. Bring yourself here and open your heart to beauty, to truth, to the door that is open to the presence of God. Here in this church, we are trying to walk together on the peaceable way, trying to hammer out division and hatred and all that separates one from another. We try and we fall short, but held in love, we try again. We come together this morning as a church to bow our heads in prayer, to raise our voices in song, to remember our promises and vow to live by them once again. Let's remain standing as you are able, and our first hymn is in our gray hymnal, number 86, Blessed Spirit of My Life. please be seated. And I'd like to invite any young ones to come forward for our time for all ages with Miss Madia.
I appreciate that you want to be so close to me, but I need a little space to get in. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. For this week, I have a very special book that has kind of a long story on how I got this copy. So I thought I had put a hold on it at my library to get like a paperback copy version of this book, and I got the email saying that like, all right, it's ready, your hold's ready, and so I went to go pick it up, and it turns out I actually put a hold on the audiobook copy. And so I contacted my friend, and I was like, hey, do you have any other books like this? What can I do? She's a teacher, she teaches 3rd grade, and she teaches 3rd grade, and she was like, actually, I have a special teacher copy of that book that I can send to you, but it's in email. And I was like, no problem, thank you so much. I appreciate any copy of this book that you can give me. So the book I'm going to be reading today is titled Grace for President. And here's how it's going to go. I'm going to read, and then I'm going to show you the pictures. How's that sound? Yeah. Okay. You have a friend named Grace? That's so cool. One morning in September, Mrs. Barrington rolled out a big poster with all of the president's pictures on it. Grace Campbell could not believe her eyes. Where are the girls? That's a very good question, said Mrs. Barrington. The truth is, our country has never had a woman president. No girl president ever? Grace asked. No, I'm afraid not, said Mrs. Barrington. Grace sat at her desk, stewed. No girls? Who'd ever heard of such a crazy thing? Finally, she raised her hand. Yes, Grace? I've been thinking it over, and I'd like to be president. Several students in the class laughed. Well, I think that's a star-spangled idea, Grace, said Mrs. Barrington. In fact, we can have our own election right here at Woodrow Wilson Elementary. The snickering in the room stopped. Grace smiled. Would anyone else like to run for president? Mrs. Barrington asked the class. Nobody raised their hand. Becoming president was going to be easy, Grace thought. The next day, Mrs. Barrington made an announcement. In the name of democracy, I have invited Mr. Waller's class to join our election. Their class has nominated Thomas Cobb to be their presidential candidate. Grace's heart sank. Thomas was the school's spelling bee champion. His experiments always took a blue ribbon at the science fair, and he was captain of the soccer team. Becoming president wasn't going to be so easy after all, Grace thought. The teachers put the names of all 50 states and the District of Columbia into a hat. Everyone except Grace and Thomas got to choose a state. I'm Texas, said Anthony. I'm New Hampshire, said Rose. I'm Michigan, said Robbie. What does the number 17 mean? Each state is assigned a number of electoral votes. That number is determined by how many people live in that state, said Mrs. Barrington. Each one of you will be a representative of your state. Altogether, our country has 538 electoral votes, Mr. Waller explained. On election day, the candidate who receives 270 electoral votes or more wins the election. Why 270? Asked Rose. That's more than half of all of the electoral votes, Mr. Waller said. Becoming president really wasn't going to be so easy, Grace thought. Grace came up with a campaign slogan, Make history, vote Grace Campbell for president. Thomas came up with his own campaign slogan, Vote for Thomas Cobb, the best man for the job. Grace listened to what issues were important to the students, and she made a list of campaign promises, a peaceful school, a cleaner school, and better hot lunches. Thomas made up his own list of promises. Free soccer lessons, no homework, fish stick tacos every day. Grace made campaign posters and buttons. Thomas made posters and buttons too. Each week, the teachers set aside time for the candidates to meet with their constituents. Polls were taken, voters were making their choices. Grace continued to campaign. At recess, she gave speeches. During lunch, she handed out free cupcakes. After school, she held rallies. Meanwhile, Thomas wasn't worried. He had very cleverly calculated that the boys in class held slightly more electoral votes than the girls. At recess, Thomas studied his spelling words. During lunch, he worked on his latest science experiment. After school, he played soccer. Even before the election, Grace made good on her promises. She joined the safety squad, she organized a school beautification committee, and she volunteered her time in the school cafeteria. In early November, Woodrow Wilson Elementary hosted a special Election Day assembly. Grace and Thomas took their places on stage as the school band began to play. Henry was the first representative to approach the microphone. The Yellowhammer state of Alabama cast its 9 electoral votes for Thomas Cobb. The last frontier state of Alaska casts its 3 electoral votes for the best man for the job, Thomas Cobb, Fletcher said. Hannah called out the Grand Canyon state of Arizona cast its 10 electoral votes for Grace Campbell. And so it went. State after state after state cast their electoral votes. The scoreboard in the gymnasium kept track of the totals. The voting demonstration was quickly coming to an end. Clara approached the podium. The Badger state of Wisconsin casts its 10 votes for my best friend, Grace Campbell. Grace looked at the scoreboard. Thomas had 268 electoral votes. She had 267. There was only one state still unaccounted for, Wyoming. Thomas grinned. Grace felt sick. Sam walked up to the microphone. He looked at Thomas. He looked at Grace. He looked down at Grace's handmade flag. Sam didn't say a word. "What are you waiting for?" Thomas whispered. The band stopped playing. All eyes were on Wyoming. Finally, Sam cleared his throat. The equality state of Wyoming casts its 3 electoral votes for... Who do you think he voted for? You think he voted for Grace? Who do you think he voted for? Grace? He casts his votes for Grace Campbell. Woohoo! The gymnasium erupted in loud cheers. Mrs. Barrington approached the podium. With 270 electoral votes, the winner is Grace Campbell. Thomas looked stunned. Grace hugged Sam. "Why did you do it?" she asked. Sam handed Grace his flag. "Because," he said, "I thought you were the best person for the job." The following week, the students in Mrs. Barrington's class were preparing for their career day presentations. Grace volunteered to go first. She stood at the front of the room and glanced at the poster still hanging on the wall. "My name is Grace Campbell, and when I grow up, I'm going to be President of the United States." This time, everyone believed she would. Can we have a round of applause for Grace? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. For any adults in the room who might have children in their lives, part of the reason I picked this book is because right now at Children's Theater of Charlotte, they are doing a musical performance of Grace for President. So if you want more information on that show, you can visit their website, or you can email me. I work there, so I know a lot of the people, and I know a lot of the ways to get free tickets to things. So if you're interested, hit me up.
For those of you who are joining us virtually, we have some people dressed up in costumes today, and some of our children getting a little bit distracted on the way out to nursery and RE. Understandably, I want to say when I preach a little bit, I've never preached before an adult-sized snail or the Green Man or Beetlejuice, so, it's a wonderful day. So. All right, at this time, we are going to enter into a time for ritual and sacred sharing. We share joys and sorrows, concerns and milestones. This morning, we light a candle for everyone impacted by Hurricane Helene and for the ongoing rescue and recovery efforts in the mountains. For all who've been impacted by other severe weather events around the globe. for an end to the epidemic of gun violence, for an end to political violence and rhetoric, and for a peaceful democratic process in our country, for the relief of the people of Gaza, for all areas of violence around the world, including Haiti, the Sudan, the Middle East, and the war in Ukraine. At this time, you are invited to come forward as you feel called to do so. You may fill out a prayer card and place it on the prayer rack. You may light your own candle of joy or concern, or you may place a stone in our shared water. I invite us now to a time of quiet rest, meditation, or prayer. And during this time of silence, I invite you to simply breathe in deeply, to breathe in peace. And as you exhale, to breathe out love to the world around us.
For today's wisdom reading, we have words from Valarie Kaur. It turns out it is extremely difficult to draw close to someone you find absolutely abhorrent. How do we listen to someone when their beliefs are disgusting or enraging or terrifying? An invisible wall forms between us and them, a chasm that seems impossible to cross. We don't even know why we should try to cross it. In these moments, we can choose to remember that the goal of listening is not to feel empathy for our opponents or validate their ideas or even change their mind in the moment. Our goal is to understand them. When listening gets hard, I focus on taking the next breath. I pay attention to sensations in my body, heat, clenching, and constriction. I feel the ground beneath my feet. Am I safe? If so, I stay and slow my breath again, quiet my mind, and release the pressure that pushes me to defend my position. I try to wonder about this person's story and the possible wound in them. I think of an earnest question and try to stay curious long enough to be changed by what I hear. Maybe, just maybe, my opponent will begin to wonder about me in return, ask me questions, listen to my story. Maybe their views will start to break apart and new horizons will open in the process. Then again, maybe not. It doesn't matter, as long as the primary goal of listening is to deepen my own understanding. Listening does not grant the other side legitimacy. It grants them humanity and preserves our own.
During my many years as a college chaplain, I normally attended a National Interfaith College Chaplains Conference every February. So every year this diverse group would meet, and the interfaith work that we were all doing was always a primary focus for our meetings. We would explore how we could create and encourage an environment where people could be in community across faith differences. Now, one year, Valarie Kaur, whose words we just heard in our wisdom reading, was our primary speaker. Kaur is a renowned Sikh activist, a filmmaker, and civil rights lawyer. And this particular conference, where she was the primary speaker, was on the eve of a publication of her new book, See No Stranger. Excellent read, I recommend to everyone. And she said the theme of this book was really a call to revolutionary love. Now, Kaur was a young adult, college-aged, in 2001. She felt called to action after the murder of fellow Sikhs in the post-9/11 violence that took place, which many of us will remember. Anyone perceived to be Muslim or different dealt with many threats of violence and sometimes acts of violence, as some of the people in her own Sikh community knew. So as a young adult, Kaur took this time to dig more deeply into her own faith and look for a way to move forward amidst great division and hate. She said that instead of seeing a stranger in people who seemed so very different from herself, she wrote these words: "You are a part of me I do not yet know. You are a part of me I do not yet know." Now, these are not easy words in today's world, which I think we all know. Hate, violent rhetoric and actions, rampant misinformation, and the demonization of others is all around us. It's hard to believe that we live in a world where meteorologists are getting death threats and FEMA employees whose entire job is about helping people in dire need are dealing with threats of violence. Now, I'm not standing here today saying that I have all the answers about how to heal such deep divisions. I wish I did. I'm not saying that I have all the answers about how we can create a world of unity and respect. However, there are people who have words of wisdom which can help us during these days. Now, Valarie Kaur is one of the people, especially from her religious perspective as a Sikh, who has some profound insights about how we can work towards a better world. And I think we all know this is a lifelong work. There are no easy answers or quick fixes. What we can do is use our spiritual foundation to guide us in how we are present in the world that we live in today. Now, we cannot control how others will respond. We are only responsible for how we act, how we engage, how we respond. Let's hear again the one sentence that Kaur wrote with her focus on revolutionary love. You are a part of me I do not yet know. Now, that's actually not an easy message for us to hear. If there's someone with whom we do not agree, perhaps vehemently about vitally important issues of life and death, our natural response is to think we are nothing alike. It's natural to demean the other, make fun of them, denigrate them, in essence, refuse to see their humanity. Now, I do want to be clear. I am not stating that there is not evil in this world, because we know there are some very real evils in this world, and we must do all we can to combat that. But that's a different sermon series. Today, we continue to focus on deep listening. Our focus for this one Sunday is how we listen as we disagree, especially in interpersonal relationships, the people that we interact with and engage with and live with as we go throughout our lives. And seeing the humanity in the other is the beginning of how we can do that. You are a part of me I do not yet know. Now, pioneering psychotherapist Carl Jung wrote about the concept of the shadow side. Now, everyone has a shadow, not just a literal one, but we have this shadow, a darker side of the consciousness that people don't normally want to acknowledge or accept. I think all of us, if we think about our lives, our motivations and actions, there's things we would rather forget about or put to the side or just never think about. The shadow side contains perhaps more negative aspects of who we are, but it is a part of who we are. And ignoring or denying this only gives the shadow more control over us. Ignoring a shadow side can also be highly problematic for a society. Every society has a shadow side. And this is what our country has been doing since its inception. trying to ignore or deny or put away the shadow side, ignoring sins of enslavement, racism, genocide of indigenous people. Ignoring or denying the shadow only gives it power, whether it's as a collective group or our own individual journeys. You are a part of me I do not yet know. So to listen deeply as we disagree, we first recognize the humanity of the other, and we then truly listen and hear their story. There is a saying, and I unfortunately do not know who first said it: hear the biography, not the ideology. Hear the biography, not the ideology. Now, as we've been exploring deep listening this month, we know it's important to listen to where people are coming from, their context and situation in life, because it helps form who they are and how they can connect with the world. Now, think of my friend and colleague, Jonathan, who grew up in Avery County, and he serves a church here in Charlotte. He's a native of that area. He's been up there a lot in recent weeks trying to help with relief efforts. And because he understands his relatives up there and their context, he's been able to do some really important work that someone who does not understand that cultural context and that biography would have some more challenges doing. And think about in our own lives, how many times have we better understood someone once we knew more about their story? Now, Valarie Kaur offers these words I'd like to share with you. She wrote, "Deep listening is an act of surrender." Deep listening is an act of surrender. We risk being changed by what we hear. We risk being changed by what we hear. Empathy is cognitive and emotional. To inhabit another person's view of the world is to feel the world with them. But I also know that it's okay if I don't feel very much for them at all. I just need to feel safe enough to stay curious. The most critical part of listening is asking what is at stake for the other person. I try to understand what matters to them, not what I think matters. Now, listening as we disagree begins with acknowledging the humanity of the other, striving to understand more about their biography, and lastly, finding points of commonalities. With all the many years I've engaged in interfaith work, we never began by talking about our differences. Whether it was getting together a group of students or having some kind of interfaith worship, we never began by talking about our differences or different beliefs, rituals, actions. We always began by finding common ground. This common ground might be interpersonal things, similarities with family or pop culture, or favorite books or movies or food. And once we can gain some commonalities, we can even start to look for larger commonalities about more important topics, such as beliefs and rituals and perspectives. Commonalities enable us to see the humanity in the other more easily, Commonalities enable us to connect with one another. And when we do that, it changes us as well. Anyone who has truly done interfaith work knows that they are changed in small and sometimes big ways. Listening as we disagree means that we are transformed as well. You are a part of me I do not yet know. It is my hope, my prayer, that in the coming weeks and months, our society can move towards a time of healing. Unitarian Universalism, our values honor the unique perspective of each person. And we know we will always disagree with each other, right? About big and small things. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to disagree, to be our own unique selves. It is how we deal with disagreement that can do so much damage to the relationship, to the other, and to ourselves. The process of healing the larger whole begins 2 people at a time. Now, we are not responsible for the outcome. We aren't responsible for how others respond. But it is up to us how we engage with our own spirits and follow our own cherished beliefs and values. Deep listening as we disagree speaks to the very best of who we are, our whole selves. We open ourselves to whatever change may come as we open ourselves to deep listening. You are a part of me I do not yet know. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen. Thank you, Anne. As I'm sure many of you know, this month of October is when we're having our Generosity Pledge campaign. We are asking all members to make a pledge for their financial giving for the upcoming calendar year, and that will help our finance committee as we begin to figure out how our budget is going to look, to have a good idea about our income. And so if you have not made your pledge yet, I hope you will certainly do that in the next couple of weeks. And during this month, we have different members of our community who are coming forth to share about why they support this church. And today, Sue Frederick is going to come and share with us. Thank you, Sue.
Good morning.
Good morning.
What a lovely place to be, huh? I am Sue Frederick, and I've been a member of this church for about a year and a half. I love helping out in the nursery, and I also enjoy the work we do on the Social Action Committee. I am now new to the Leadership Development Committee, so I want to let you know that if you or anybody you know is interested in finding out how your talents can help our church, you can contact me or any of the other people on the committee. I support the Piedmont Unitarian Universalist Church because love is at the center of everything we do. It's at the center of our values and our actions. And I have aimed all my life to try to have love and service at my center. We all learn that it's not enough to fix everything, but I believe it can help anything. And when I first came into this sanctuary, it was very moving for me. I felt this was the community I was seeking, a community committed to helping do together what we could never do alone, and do it with love at the center. So please join me in supporting our pledge campaign as we unite in love for the future of Piedmont UU Church. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue, for sharing your words and your love. Now is our time for giving. Let there be an offering to sustain this place, sustain and strengthen this place, which is sacred to so many of us, a community of memory and of hope, for we are now the keepers of the dream. This month, we're sharing our offering plate with You Can Vote. You Can Vote trains and mobilizes volunteers to educate, register, and empower all North Carolina citizens to successfully cast their ballot. We ask that you place your gift in the baskets as they make their way around the room, and you're always welcome to give online at puuc.org or by texting PUUC at the number 73256. Today's offering will now gratefully be received.
We give thanks for all the generous gifts you offer, your time, talents, and treasures for our beloved community. I invite you now to please stand or rise, embody your spirit for our closing hymn, found in our great hymnal 286, and we're doing verses 1 and 2 of A Chorus Silence. Now, before we extinguish our chalice, I offer thanks for all the many volunteers who've helped make our service possible. And of course, we have our covered dish, which the membership team has helped organize. So we do ask after the service if y'all can place hymnals back on the cart near the piano, and then help set up our tables and chairs. That will be a big help. And just as Robin said at the beginning of the service, if you did not bring any food, if you're visiting, if you just forgot to bring food, please stay. I know we will have plenty of food. We always do. And we really want to be able to sit and to visit and get to know each other better. At the end of the meal, we will have a costume contest. And Madia also has some activities and special things planned for our children today. So let us take a moment to give thanks as we do each Sunday at the end of our service, either in our hearts or with words, for the things for which we are grateful. New entryway. Amen to that. Yes, sir. Wonderful grandchildren. Yes. Diversity. So, okay. For laughter, yes. Yes, for this, all the work that's been done for this upcoming sanctuary garden.
I like all the costumes, thank you.
Yes, for all the people helping participate with the with our event this afternoon. In a few moments. So.
I'm grateful that Mel came today, and tomorrow is his birthday.
Oh, happy birthday, Mel! Glad to see you.
Anne and her music.
Yes, Anne and her music, absolutely. And we give thanks for all these things and so much more which we carry in our hearts this morning. We now extinguish our chalice, but before we extinguish the chalice, one more thing, I'm sorry. Is Leah here today? Leah? No, okay. Leah is someone who's going to be offering chair yoga in November via Zoom. So please keep she was hoping she might be able to join us today, but please keep your eye out for the email about that. It's going to be Thursday afternoons from 3 to 4. So, okay. So now we are ready to extinguish our chalice. We now extinguish our chalice, but we carry its light, its warmth, and its meaning with us until we meet again. May we go in peace, believe in peace, create peace wherever we may wander. May it be so. Now for our closing song, we make a circle. You may hold hands if you would like to, or you may simply place your hands on your heart.